The first thing that I would like to communicate is just that making this video has been very challenging. I recently renamed my YouTube channel to be just my name, mainly because I realized that whatever content that I produce, whatever videos that I make, I want to be able to stand by that with as much honesty, integrity, authenticity, genuinity as possible. And so by making a video about psychedelics, in a sense, I feel like I'm putting myself at risk because this means that I'm being open to the whole world about my opinions about psychedelics. I'm being open to the whole world about where I stand. So that could mean that future employers or current employers or potential relationships, friends, family members, all may know where I stand on this topic. And this feels sort of risky, but in a sense, it feels like it's needed because the world at large has completely misrepresented and misunderstood what psychedelics are capable of providing for humanity. And I think that if you are a psychonaut, if you're a spiritual seeker, if you're someone who is interested in pursuing psychedelics, like, this cannot be bottled up inside any longer. I think humanity is reaching a point where we need every single tool at our disposal to become more conscious, to become more compassionate, to become more aware, to understand ourselves at deeper levels. And psychedelics, hands down, are one of the most powerful tools for that end, for that goal, for that aim. And so therefore, I think it is important for all of us to stand up and be honest about these substances, to be honest about what we stand for. So just to give some context for this video, Oregon recently passed a law that basically provides a roadmap, a legal roadmap for the use of psilocybin mushrooms in a controlled setting. Specifically, the measure, quote, amends state law to require Oregon Health Authority to establish Oregon Psilocybin Services Program to allow licensed/regulated production, processing, delivery, possession of psilocybin exclusively for the administration of psilocybin services by licensed facilitator to qualified client, end quote. However, this video is not going to be going over the legal technicalities of what happened in Oregon. Instead, what I would like to do is talk about what this measure 109, what this means in the context of humanity and our future as we move into the 21st century. And I also want to discuss what this means in the context of the individual. So the individual spiritual seeker who is interested in exploring altered states of perception, altered states of consciousness for the aim of self-understanding, to have a deeper understanding of themselves. And so even though this law is significant, I think actually what is more significant is what this law means for our collective movement into the future. The thing about psychedelics is that they have the power to utterly obliterate our belief systems. By belief systems, I mean our entire perception and understanding of reality. We take for granted just how much the mind constructs our view of the world. We all collectively believe and participate in systems that are built off relativity, though, and even when we see through this relativity, even when we see through these fabrications, we often find ourselves slipping back into old belief and behavioral patterns. Money, success, capitalism, government, material gain, language, the belief in a physical reality, the belief in a universe composed of separate objects, the belief in time, space, and ourselves as separate individuals all comes under scrutiny with high-dose psychedelic states. In other words, our minds are constructing a matrix of reality, but this matrix has no inherent truth value. We are free to construct reality in an infinite number of ways, but the way that we construct it on a daily basis is an amalgamation of programming drilled into us by our culture, by our society, by our family, by our biology. Psychedelics show us, though, that these are empty. They show us this emptiness and relativity of the programming. They show us that individually and collectively, we are capable of so much more. And this is a point that I think needs to be really deeply understood. I mean, I'm going to say some stuff right now, but until we really sit and reflect with what I'm talking about for ourselves, it doesn't mean much. But it's basically that our entire way of life, the entire orientation by which we are living life on a daily basis, if we are in a developed country that has access to the internet, all of this is completely relative. It's a complete artificial system that has been collectively agreed upon by all of us through the use of the government, through the use of laws and law enforcement rather. However, one of the insights that we start to cultivate as we access these altered states of consciousness is just how much our minds are constructing reality. We start to see very, very deeply that all of this entire cultural matrix is completely artificial and a byproduct of our mind, and so therefore is free to be constructed in many, many different ways. So all of the limitations that we impose on ourselves collectively, all of the collective problems that we are dealing with are byproducts of the system that we are collectively agreeing upon, but this very system that we're collectively agreeing upon is completely empty of existential truth value, meaning that, again, we can construct it any way that we want. And when we start to realize that we can construct it in this infinite amount of different ways, the ability for us to produce human happiness, the ability for us to produce more good in the world than suffering, more happiness in the world than suffering, starts to become a real possibility. We start to see that we can maximize happiness in the world. It's not just this fairy tale of a dream, but we have to have the open-mindedness to do so. We have to have a clear insight and understanding into the emptiness of our own systems to truly understand the infinite potential of these very systems. Psychedelics provide that openness. They provide that openness by showing us just how magnificent, just how infinite, just how extraordinary reality really is. They do so by dissolving the limitations within our mind, the limitations that impose these limiting beliefs about our systems, the idea that we have to live in a capitalist society, the idea that we have to have such massive wealth inequality, the idea that we can't come up with better ways, more sustainable ways to grow and produce food, the limitation that we have to have such a massive class divide, that there's this huge homelessness crisis going on right now that we're all just sort of ignoring and sweeping under the rug, pretending it's not happening. The limitation that third world countries have to remain that way, and there's just nothing that we can really do about it except take advantage of them. All of these limitations become peanuts. They become peanuts, man. Salted peanuts when we understand their true nature. And it's incredibly important for more of us to understand their true nature. So just to speak bluntly, reality is pure, open possibility and magic, yet because of this contemporary collective matrix of mind we're all participating in, we fail to acknowledge this freedom and magic. But the thing is, psychedelics are a skeleton key for tapping into this unimaginable potentiality that is inside of all of us. And perhaps more significantly, psychedelics allow us to tap into an ineffable compassion and love that is impossible to find and develop if we go with the flow of this psychological matrix we call society and culture. And it is my firm belief that this compassion, that this love, is something that humanity collectively is going to have to start cultivating if we are to move effectively into the 21st century. So not only are we going to have to face the aforementioned problems that I've already hit on, but there are a growing number of technological advancements that humanity is going to have to find a way to confront. Now, this includes artificial intelligence, how artificial intelligence is going to completely restructure and change the way that our economic systems are operating right now. This includes gene editing at the smallest molecular scale of DNA, CRISPR-Cas9. That is a new technology that is able to edit DNA as it continues to advance. We are going to be able to manipulate the genetic code of children before they are born. So the ethical ramifications that are going to result if we're allowed to just create this new class divide that's not based on wealth, it's not based on family status, it's not based on geography or what country you're born in, but that is based on your literal biology, that is based on your genetic code. How are we going to handle that? How is this technology going to be used? The possibility for it to be abused is astronomical if we don't have the ethical orientation capable of using it for the common good rather than for, again, dividing and separating us. The other main issue that I see is the absolute breakdown of our ecosystems, of our environment. Right now we are destroying the planet at a level and at a pace that is wildly unsustainable. The way that we produce food is awful for the earth. And not only is it awful for the earth, but it produces an insurmountable amount of suffering for the animals that are involved. Not only are we killing animals and polluting the environment as we do so, but we're also tearing down the rainforests and we're polluting our oceans and our ice caps are melting, our magnetic poles are shifting. There's very, very deep ecological change that's going on that is not good for our survival as a species. And if we don't get our act together and start doing something about it, this will create enormous disasters. The threat of future pandemics, this isn't necessarily a technological threat, but it is a threat that humanity is not ready to face. Right now, COVID-19 is running rampant, but what happens when we encounter a bacteria that is immune to all of our antibiotics because we've abused antibiotics and have created antibiotic-resistant bacteria? All of these things are coming. All of these things are coming at us very, very quickly. Probably more things that I'm not even thinking of or not even speaking of. What do we do in the face of this? What do we do to combat these challenges? Well, we have to become more conscious. We have to become more compassionate. And I would say one solution to this is that the vast majority of the human population is going to have to adopt some sort of spiritual, self-reflective practice, such as meditation. The issue, though, that I see with meditation is that while it is enormously powerful in the long run, while it is enormously powerful at creating lasting, sustainable changes within consciousness, it takes an enormous amount of front-end effort and discipline to pay off. And I don't think that meditation alone is going to be powerful enough within the short term to give humanity the perspective it needs to wake the fuck up to the reality of our situation. This is where psychedelics come in, because psychedelics, without a doubt, launch us into enormously powerful states that allow us to see ourselves more authentically, see the damage that we are doing at this much, much broader scale on an intellectual level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on an individual level, all of it much more effectively and much more quickly than meditation does. Let me be clear though about all of this. I'm not trying to make it sound like that I've got it all figured out or that I'm some enlightened woke dude or something like that. I'm not trying to create that impression at all. I'm trying to speak from humility. I'm trying to speak from direct experience with psychedelics and with meditation here. It's just that I see these threats that are coming. I see these threats that humanity is going to have to face, and I see no one talking about them. I think this is one of the main advantages to this measure. One of the, not just advantage, calling it an advantage almost downplays its significance. This is why this measure is so significant, because it allows the public an opportunity to pursue a tool that opens us wide open. The opportunity to pursue a tool that shows us a compassion in our hearts, a truth in our being that cannot be replicated, that cannot be ignored. So in the long run, I firmly believe that because of this pathway, essentially, that's been created in Oregon, the pathway that's going to open this up for other states to pursue, which is then going to open this possibility up for other countries to pursue, I think this pathway is going to facilitate the adoption of spiritual practice and make it a mainstream phenomena, which will then in turn provide the space needed to solve these collective challenges. But psychedelics, in this sense, are the facilitator. They are the key. It is my firm position that we are collectively cut off from source, from truth, from love. We are all trapped in a system of selfishness, greed, which not only propagates the destruction and slaughter of Earth and her ecosystems, but a system that numbs and distracts us from life's greatest treasures. Psychedelics provide the possibility of a space, a way of experiencing life that circumvents the conditioning of this system, such that we're left with undeniable proof that there is a divine nature to life, and more specifically, a divine nature to who and what we are. Psychedelics provide a glimpse of an individual awakening into this nature of self and existence. They provide a glimpse of the space we must move towards if we are to face the growing threats of the future. But I want to be very clear here. The mantle of responsibility is found within each and every one of us. The paradox is, even though a great change is going to be required of us on a collective, external level, the only way this change is possible is through internal effort and growth. Psychedelics show us the possibility for each and every one of us to awaken to our true nature and potential. They act as a guru for what work needs to be done on a daily basis in a sober, grounded state of mind. They cannot do the work for us, they merely show us the way. And so perhaps the most important part of the video, if you've made it this far, is that psychedelics alone are not enough. Psychedelics alone are not going to magically change society. I mean, to an extent they will, totally, they'll magically change society, and if you've explored these states deeply, you'll know that to be the case, but from another point of view, they're not enough. While psychedelics show us these enormously significant, beautiful, sacred, divine states of consciousness, they're not very effective at embodying these states back into our sober, lived experience. Because the thing is no matter what, no matter how many times we trip, we're always going to come back down. We're always going to come back down to this groundedness, to this sobriety. And if we're not actively doing the work in the state that we are occupying 99% of the time, then we're not going to be creating the change that we need to create. I read a metaphor once on, I believe it was just some random internet forum or Reddit or something, but it was beautiful. It explains the difference between psychedelics and meditation so effectively. They said something like, psychedelics are like taking a rocket ship up to a mountain, and meditation is like walking up the mountain in like a hike. And so even though the walk is much slower, you're actually making traction, you're actually making ground. Whereas with the rocket ship, yes, you go blasting off, but you also come crashing back down to right back where your landing pad was. But what's so amazing is that if you can start to work with them synergistically, if you can start to allow your psychedelic practice to push your meditation, and if you can allow your meditation to ground and embody your psychedelic trips, the two become this enormously powerful force. And so this law, this measure actually allows this synergy to open up to the public, to open up to the mainstream. And I believe this is a significant tipping point for our future, for the well-being, for the flourishing of our species. And not just the flourishing of our species, but the flourishing of you, if you're watching this video. If you're watching this video, chances are you've either had psychedelics or you need to try psychedelics. And I think if you orient their use, orient their practice in the ways that I'm describing, orienting yourself towards using them as a synergist for your spirituality rather than the main driver, you will go very far, very, very far. And not only that, but you're going to be doing the work that is going to be needed to benefit humanity. This was truly a win for humanity. It will be marked as a significant turning point in our history, and I hope that these tools are distributed effectively and efficiently enough to confront the growing challenges that we face. While again, psychedelics cannot do the work for us, they do show us what is possible and what we are capable of realizing in our waking experience. They are allies, gifts from an intelligence far greater than our own. If you are lucky enough to have access to these tools, consider letting them become much more intentional and guiding you to do the work while sober. And lastly, regardless of whether you choose to work with these substances, I ask that we all be an example for what is going to be needed in the coming century. Humanity, Earth, and all sentient beings on this planet will need every one of us to play our part. Thank you.